Here is an intuitive and detailed discussion of Dadabhai Naoroji's drain of wealth theory. Dadabhai Naoroji's drain of wealth theory, an intuitive explanation. Imagine India as a vibrant, productive farm. The British, the colonial rulers, are like a management company that claims to be running the farm for the benefit of the owner, India's people. Naoroji's theory says, the farm manager, the British, is systematically taking the harvest, the seeds, and the profits out of the farm and sending them back to his own house, Britain, leaving the farm itself perpetually poor, unable to grow, and even starving. The core idea is that the British rule resulted in a unidirectional flow of wealth from India to Britain, for which India received no corresponding economic return. The three intuitive pillars of the drain. Naoroji showed that the drain worked through three major interconnected channels. 1. The wages paid to foreigners, the human drain. This is the element that most closely resembles a modern brain drain, or a salary drain. The intuition. When a country is run by its own people, the high salaries, pensions, and spending of its administrators, military officers, and engineers stay within the country. This local spending creates more local jobs and boosts the local economy, e.g., the official buys a house, hires servants, buys local goods. The reality under the British. The British monopolized all the high-paying jobs in the civil administration, army, and public works. These British officers earned massive salaries paid for by Indian taxes, sent a large portion of this income back to their families in Britain, remittances, retired to Britain and drew their pensions there, again paid for by Indian taxes which were called home charges. The result: India paid for the salaries of its top talent, but that money and the resulting consumer demand didn't circulate in the Indian economy. It was immediately siphoned off to enrich the British economy. 2. The forced bill for running the empire, the fiscal drain. The intuition. You hired a security guard, the British Army, and a lawyer, the British administration. You should pay them for their service, right? The reality under the British. Naoroji argued that India was forced to pay the entire cost of its own subjugation plus much more. This includes home charges. These were expenses charged to the Indian budget but spent in Britain. They were the biggest component of the drain. They included interest on loans taken by the East India Company, costs of the India office in London, and pensions for British officials. India was essentially forced to pay for the rope used to hang it. Wars and expansion. Indian revenue and soldiers were frequently used to fund and fight British wars and expansionist campaigns outside India, like in Afghanistan or China. India was paying the bills for Britain's global empire building, getting nothing in return but debt. The result: the money that should have been invested in Indian education, healthcare, infrastructure, or famine relief was instead used to run the British colonial machinery and finance its global wars. 3. The illusion of free trade, the trade drain. The intuition. In a healthy business relationship, if I sell you $100 worth of goods, you pay me $100. An excess of exports over imports, a trade surplus, means a country is earning money from the world. The reality under the British. India consistently had a huge export surplus. It exported far more raw materials, cotton, indigo, opium, etc., and manufactured goods than it imported. This should have meant a massive inflow of gold or silver to India. The catch: the British government intercepted these earnings. Instead of the money coming to Indian producers, the trade earnings were used in London to pay the home charges, Pillar 2. The analogy for the trade drain. An Indian farmer sells $100 worth of cotton to a merchant in London. The London merchant doesn't send $100 back to the farmer. Instead, the British government says, we'll use that $100 to pay the pension of a retired British general. The Indian taxpayer, the same farmer, already paid for the general's pension, but we will simply mark the cotton's value as the payment. Quote, the farmer produced valuable goods, but the value of those goods was appropriated to cover debts and expenditures that offered no benefit to the farmer or India. The export was not paid for by Britain, it was paid for by India's own taxes and revenue. Why the drain theory was so powerful? Naoroji was not just complaining, he was doing economic accounting in a rigorous way in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. 1. It exposed the myth. The British claimed their rule was a great gift to India, providing stability, railways, and education. Naoroji countered with data, arguing that Britain was not just ruling India but was plundering it. He turned a moral argument into a financial one. 2. It explained poverty. The drain theory provided a rational, measurable explanation for why India, a land of immense resources, was suffering from perpetual famine and extreme poverty. Naoroji argued that India was not poor because of its culture or overpopulation, but because its lifeblood, its capital, was constantly being sucked out. 3. It fueled nationalism. The theory became the foundational economic critique of British rule. It convinced the early Indian nationalists, the moderates, that the fundamental goal was not just political reform, but gaining control over India's finances so the wealth could be retained and reinvested in the country. This intellectual argument was a crucial stepping stone to the demand for Swaraj, self-rule.